I was folding a dish towel this morning, the yellow one with little faded lemons printed on it. I've had it for years, though I can't quite remember where it came from. It's thin now, a little frayed at the edges, but I keep it. Not because it's useful, though it still does the job, but because when I see it, something soft settles inside me, like a breath I didn't know I was holding. It's strange, isn't it? How little things, a quiet drawer, a clean corner, a chair left empty, can make us feel safe, less cluttered in our homes, and somehow less cluttered inside. In this video, I want to share 13 simple habits I've noticed in seniors, women I admire, who've managed to keep their homes calm and their hearts a little lighter, not from having less, but from knowing what to hold and what to let rest. There's a woman I visit sometimes, her mom, her name is Marjorie. She's 84 now, lives alone in a little house with lace curtains and a bird feeder right outside the window. The first time I stepped into her living room, it was like walking into a quiet sigh. Nothing loud, nothing fancy, but everything had a place, and every corner felt loved. She once told me, "I don't organize to impress anyone. I do it so I don't lose myself in the noise." That stayed with me. And if you're watching this today, maybe you've been feeling a bit of that noise lately too. Maybe you're not looking for perfection, just a little more peace. So, if you're ready, pour yourself something warm. Let's take our time. You're not alone in this. This morning, I wiped the little table by the front window. Just a soft cloth and a quiet moment. There wasn't much on it. A coaster, a pair of reading glasses, an old issue of Better Homes. But I set them aside, wiped away the faint layer of dust, and set them back, a little straighter this time. It took me maybe 5 minutes, but the room, it felt lighter, and so did I. I've found, especially these days, that peace doesn't come in grand gestures. It comes in small choices. And one of the kindest things we can do for ourselves is to begin the day with a little care for our space. Not the whole house, just one small corner that says, here is calm. My friend Margaret does this every morning right after her tea. She picks one drawer, one shelf, even just a little basket by the door. Some mornings she rearranges a few books. Other times she tosses an expired coupon or folds a scarf that's been left out too long. She says it helps her remember she still has agency, that even if the world outside is noisy, her home doesn't have to be. And I get that, because when you live alone, the silence can feel heavy sometimes. It's easy to let things slide, tell yourself it's not worth it. But that little act, it's not about the drawer. It's about telling yourself you matter, that your peace is worth showing up for, even in small, quiet ways. There's a kind of gentle power in reclaiming 5 minutes, not to chase perfection, but just to start the day not as a reaction, but as a choice. Peace doesn't always arrive with a plan. Sometimes it begins with the way we fold a towel. And then there are days when even 5 minutes feels too much. That's okay too, because sometimes what we need more than action is permission to rest. There's this old wooden chair near my hallway window. A bit worn on the arms, one leg shorter than the others. It creaks when you sit in it. For years, I'd walk past it and see a purse tossed on it, a coat draped over the back, sometimes the mail pile that never made it to the drawer. But one day, I cleared it off, just like that. Sat down. And I remember thinking, so this is what this chair was meant for. It's funny how a simple thing like a chair can tell you something about yourself, not in words, in silence. That chair became a little place I could just be. Not scroll through my phone, not sort the bills, just sit. Watch the light shift on the floor, listen to the creak of the house, let myself exist, well, without doing. My neighbor, Evelyn, told me something once. She said, When my husband passed, I kept putting things in his chair. At first, it made me feel like he was still around. But one morning, I cleared it and sat in it myself. I cried, then I laughed. And now, I sit there every afternoon. It's mine now. And somehow, it's his too. There's something sacred about keeping one space, even just a chair, untouched by clutter. A little reminder that your presence matters, that your stillness has value. Because for many of us, especially after 60, we're not always needed the way we used to be, not called on as often. So we fill spaces. We busy our hands. We cover chairs meant for resting with bags, with tasks, with old grief we're afraid to set down. But maybe the kindest thing we can do is leave that one seat empty for ourselves. Sometimes the most healing space is the one that holds nothing but you. And then there are days when that chair stays empty, not from neglect, but because even stillness needs invitation. And the next habit, well, it begins with something just as gentle. There's this small wooden tray I keep by the front door. Nothing fancy, just enough space for my keys, my reading glasses, sometimes a letter that came a little late. Every morning, I set things down there, and every evening, before turning off the lights, I gather them back, like tucking the day into bed. I haven't always lived neatly. There were years when every surface in the house became a temporary spot, a place to put unopened mail, half-used gloves, memories I hadn't yet decided what to do with. But all those temporaries, they quietly became clutter, not just in the house, but in me. One day, I visited Miss Ruth. She's a widow who lives a few streets over. In her cozy living room, she had a woven basket on a side table. I asked, "Why not just put these away?" She smiled and said, "Because I still use them every day, but I don't need them everywhere." That stayed with me. We don't always need to throw things out to feel peace. Sometimes we just need to give them a home, a gentle boundary, a tray, a small box, a line that says, "You belong here." And just like that, the space can breathe again. So can we. Because after a certain age, our minds feel a bit like our homes, not looking for more, just hoping to feel settled. Creating a boundary isn't about restriction. It's about making room for peace. And then there are things harder to release than just belongings. There's a kind of quiet that only comes after dinner. When the plates are washed, the lights are softer, and the house feels like it's exhaling with you. That's when I fold the tablecloth. Same cloth every night. It's old with a little faded edge, but it's always clean, Mom, and always there. Some folks might say, "Why not leave it on?" But to me, folding it is more than tidying up. It's how I mark the end of the day. A soft closing, like turning the last page of a chapter before bed. I learned this from my sister, actually. After her husband passed, she said the quiet got too loud sometimes. So she made little rituals. Folding the tablecloth was one of them. "It helps me feel like I'm still here," she told me once, "and the house still listens." There's something deeply comforting about small habits that ask nothing from you, except presence. In a world that often feels like it's rushing past us, folding the tablecloth reminds me, this home still has rhythm, and I still get to set the pace. Sometimes peace doesn't come from doing more. It comes from doing one small thing with love. And for the things we're not quite ready to decide on yet, there's something else I've come to keep nearby. I keep a basket by the sideboard in the hallway, not for decoration, though it's a lovely woven one my granddaughter gave me, but for in-between things. The kind of things that show up when you're not looking. An old charger, a birthday card you don't want to toss yet, a button you swore you'd sew back on. There was a time I'd leave those items on any flat surface. The counter, the piano bench, even the chair I meant to sit on. But all those little things piled up into noise. Not the kind you hear, but the kind you feel. This basket, it's not a solution. It's a kindness, a quiet agreement with myself. You don't have to decide now, but they won't take over your space in the meantime. I got the idea from Helen, my neighbor who's always been graceful in how she keeps house. She said, giving clutter a container is like giving emotions a journal. They're still there, but they're not spilling over. There's freedom in that, isn't there? In knowing you don't have to have it all sorted. You just need somewhere soft to hold the undecided. A temporary home for clutter is a permanent gift to your peace. And sometimes all it takes is one gentle habit to remind us that we're still choosing, not just reacting. Every Sunday morning, just after my second cup of coffee, I open a drawer. Just one. Not to clean it out, just to look. I hold things. A scarf I haven't worn since '98. A little souvenir from a trip I barely remember. A half-used lotion with a scent that no longer feels like me. I don't always let them go right away. Sometimes I just ask the question, am I keeping this or is it keeping me? It was my neighbor Alice who taught me that. She'd lost her husband a year before and had been going through his things little by little. I give myself permission not to decide, she said once, but I also give myself permission to ask. That stayed with me, because sometimes the heaviest things we carry aren't even in our hands. They're in the quiet agreements we make to keep what we no longer need, just because we always have. There's something gentle about looking back every week and asking, without pressure, is this still serving my life today? It's not about being ruthless. It's about being honest and a little more free each time. Peace doesn't come when we finally finish sorting. It comes when we stop avoiding what we already know. And when we're brave enough to make space, even just a little, something else opens up too. I have a drawer in the hallway dresser, the top one, just under the old lamp with the floral shade. And it's completely empty. That wasn't always the case. It used to be crammed with odds and ends, expired coupons, random cords, mystery keys, things that had no story, just a spot to hide in. One afternoon, while clearing it out, I paused before refilling it, and I thought, what if I didn't? What if I left it open? Not physically, but open to possibility. Since then, that drawer has stayed empty, not as a rule, but as a reminder that not every space has to be filled to be meaningful. It's strange how we often equate full with useful, but I've found more calm in that single empty drawer than in any organizing system I've ever tried. And maybe, just maybe, having one untouched space in a house full of history is like having one quiet breath in a day full of noise. Sometimes an empty drawer isn't what's missing. It's what's finally allowed to rest. And from there, we begin to see. Simplicity isn't a lack. It's a kindness we offer to our future selves. I was folding laundry one afternoon. Same old rhythm, same soft hum of the dryer in the background, when I opened the bottom drawer of the old chest. Inside were little keepsakes, birthday cards from my daughter when she was in high school, a button from my father's coat, an old locket I didn't even remember wearing. There were dozens of things, all tied to someone I'd loved. And that's when it hit me. They're all special, but I don't need all of them to remember. I once visited my friend Elaine. She had a single shelf with 3 framed items. One was a recipe in her mother's handwriting, another a photo of her and her husband laughing on their porch, and the third, a pressed daisy from her daughter's wedding. That's all I keep in sight, she said. Everything else lives in me. And you know what? That shelf felt sacred, not cluttered, just full of soul. Because the truth is, keeping one thing, the right thing, often honors the memory better than a whole box ever could. It's not about choosing what to throw away. It's about choosing what helps us remember with peace. Letting go of the extra doesn't erase the memory. It gives it room to breathe. And sometimes the most loving thing we can do is to keep less but hold it closer. The other day I opened a kitchen cabinet and found a jar of spice with no label. I brought it close, took a sniff and paused. Was that cumin or cinnamon? That moment reminded me, even the things we think we'll never forget slip over time. I think of my friend Harold. He once showed me a small wooden box filled with tiny envelopes, each with a short note inside. Wrote them when I moved here, he said, just so I'd remember why I kept them. There was a seashell with a note that read, "From Anna, on the day we made it to the lighthouse." A brooch. Mom wore this every Sunday, even when she was tired. Simple, human, and so deeply touching. Sometimes it's not about getting rid of things. It's about remembering them more clearly, with intention. Because when we name something, write it down, label it, we anchor the feeling. We free our hearts from having to hold too much, too tight, all at once. Memories fade fastest when they hide in silence. Give them a voice, even a small one, and they stay. And just like that, the things we keep become less about fear and more about love. The other day I was dusting a corner shelf, the kind I used to just pile things on, and noticed how empty it looked. Not in a sad way, but just peaceful. Like the shelf was breathing again. It reminded me of a time, years ago, when I bought a ceramic teapot at a flea market. Beautiful thing. Hand-painted violets. I brought it home and then stood there in the kitchen turning in circles, realizing there was no space left. I set it down on the counter. It stayed there for months, getting in the way, until one day I packed it up and gave it away. Since then, I've learned a small habit. Before I bring anything new into the house, I ask it, and myself, where will you rest? My friend Dottie, she has a rule. If it doesn't have a home, it doesn't come home. Simple as that, because clutter most times doesn't come from bad choices. It comes from rushed ones, from forgetting that peace takes planning too. A calm home isn't about having less. It's about knowing where everything belongs, including your own peace. And sometimes the hardest things to let go of are the ones we never made room for to begin with. There's something about the way light falls at the end of the day, not bright, not loud, just soft, like a sigh. I have this little lamp on my nightstand. Nothing fancy, just warm enough to make the room feel kind. Every night, right before I turn in, I switch it on. And for a few moments, that gentle glow makes everything slow down, even my thoughts. I remember visiting my sister after she lost her husband. Her room was dark, too quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't comfort. One day, I brought her a lamp, just like mine. "Try it," I said. She didn't say much, but that night she called me. "It helped," she whispered. "It made me feel not so alone." You see, we don't always need to rearrange the whole house to feel held. Sometimes it's just one light, one habit, one soft corner we give ourselves permission to rest in. Peace isn't always in what we see. Sometimes it's in how the light meets the end of the day. And that little glow by the bed, it becomes more than a lamp. It becomes a kind of welcome home. This morning, I couldn't remember the name of the cream my daughter brought me last Christmas. It was sitting right there on the dresser. Lovely scent, lavender and something soft. But the name? Gone. Just a blank space in the back of my mind. So I opened that little notebook I keep in the kitchen drawer, the one with the worn corners and the pink elastic band, and there it was. Lavender and Oat Hand Balm from Lily, Christmas morning, 2023. I smiled, not just because I found the name, but because I'd written it down in her handwriting. I had asked her to spell it for me, and she did, like when she was 10. Some years back, I started keeping a small book just for the forgettable things, the jar lid sizes, the date the plumber came, that special setting on the washing machine I always mess up. It's not fancy, it's just quiet company, a soft helper waiting patiently in the drawer. My neighbor Ruth, she has one too. She calls it her second brain, says it helps her keep her real one for the things that matter, memories, moments, peace. And, you know, it's not about being forgetful. It's about being kind to yourself, giving your mind permission to breathe, to not hold everything all the time. Because carrying the whole house in your head is a kind of weight no one talks about. And letting go of that weight, that's a kind of organizing too. Sometimes we don't write things down because we're forgetful. We write them down because we're ready to live with less worry. And then there are the things we don't write because they're already safe in the heart. There's a box I kept in the back of the closet, old photos, postcards, a ring without a stone, a recipe card with a grease stain shaped like a thumbprint. I hadn't opened it in years. Every time I tried, something inside me just tightened. But one day last fall, I didn't open the box. I cleaned the shelf it sat on, dusted the corners, folded the scarves stacked on next to it. I didn't go in looking for emotion. I just made the space gentler. And oddly enough, that helped. It's hard, you know. We try to deal with the past all at once. We think we should be strong enough to open the box, touch the old photos, sort through our children's drawings or our husband's handwriting. But sometimes the kindest thing we can do is start on the outside. Let the hands move where the heart isn't ready yet. I remember Nora, a neighbor I used to walk with. She once told me, I clean the room first because if I start with the memories, I won't finish anything at all. And she was right. When the space is clearer, the heart follows. Not the other way around. We don't need to rush our goodbyes. We don't need to make peace with everything in one afternoon. Sometimes peace begins with wiping a shelf, folding a sweater, or airing out a drawer long before we're ready to let go of what it holds. Some memories ask to be honored quietly, not sorted, not labeled, not let go of, just given room to breathe. And in that pause, maybe we start breathing too. Maybe you've already tried a few of these habits. Maybe your living room still has unopened boxes, or that one drawer you keep meaning to sort. And maybe you're just tired. That's okay, truly. Because I believe a home doesn't need to be perfect. It only needs to be gentle enough that you want to come back to it. You don't clean your house for guests. You do it so it can take care of you. If any of these little ways brought you a bit of peace, I'd love to know. Or maybe you've got your own rhythm, your own quiet ritual that makes the day feel softer. Share it if you'd like. We can still learn from one another, even from faraway homes. And if you ever need a soft voice to sit beside you in silence, this porch light will always be on.